What does a community manager actually do? I get asked this question a lot, and I was recently asked this question when I was speaking at a mastermind event. So I wanted to share the answer with you. And oh, by the way, if you haven't downloaded yet my guide to a community manager, then you definitely want to do that. You just need to go to shanalyn.com/best practices, and that is going to share with you what to look for in a community manager and the best practices of a community manager. In the meantime, enjoy this episode. So let's talk about what that community manager role is. So I break it down differently in my course. In my course, I talk about their different roles like cheerleader, party host, bouncer, librarian, like really strategic thinking. But for you all, I just want to get really simple around the tasks. So your community manager needs to own your community forum, whether that's a Facebook group or a circle community or a Mighty Networks or an Instagram community that they have now. They own that. That means that they create the plan for it. They set it up. They are the ones who are aware of all updates and new settings. They keep it optimized at all times. So if it's a Facebook group, for example, they need to be paying attention to all of the new features that are rolling out in Facebook groups. Because if you have a Facebook group, they roll out a new feature and they turn it on for all groups. They are not even asking permission. So they need to know about all of that. They're also the one really supporting with that forum or Facebook group moderation and engagement. So they're not the only one to do this. I think a lot of times people think, I'm not going to hire a community manager. I'm never going to show up in my community again. But a community manager should be the first touch point in that community, but they should be feeding you the most important posts to engage on. Important. What does that mean? That means there's a lot of activity on the post. So a whole lot of people are going to see it because it's a high engagement post. It's a post that they're not quite sure how to handle because maybe a question like that hasn't been asked or addressed in your community before, so they don't really have anything to model after. Maybe it's a post as a real culture piece, right? Either like, we really need to celebrate somebody's win, or we really need to course correct because this person's mindset is really struggling. And the visionary, you're the mindset coach, if you will, for your members. So you've got to come in and like give that extra hurrah to that individual. But they should be handling a large majority of the things that come into your group and helping make connections among members and getting that engagement going. So if you don't have a VA, your community manager is also just doing let people in and let people out. But a really great community manager will eventually elevate in their skills. You'll want them to do more for you, and they will need to outsource some things to a VA as well. Like that's what that growth path looks like. Eventually, your community manager isn't doing everything for you anymore. So they will need to outsource to a VA. The other thing that they do, other than just sort of own that community forum, is own that onboarding process for the community forum in particularly. So really thinking about when a new member joins your community forum, how are we getting them acclimated to the culture? How are we showing them around, having them introduce themselves, making connections? How are we making them aware of our guidelines? Like they need to be thinking through that onboarding process. And my recommendation is that they actually help support you in your onboarding process for your program across the board. So if you have a course, if you have a membership, even if it's service-based, really looking at how do you onboard new clients and what does that experience look like? And can your community manager help improve that experience? So own the forum, community onboarding, and really just giving you additional perspective in onboarding as a whole. And then communication for your community. Now, I find that when people hire community managers, they tend to take over all communication. So they're writing weekly newsletters, they're sending out announcements about events, and 100%, like in the early days when it's just you and your community manager or you and a VA and a community manager, like, yes, have them support in those ways. They can help do a weekly newsletter. They can do your event reminder emails. But really at the core of a community manager, their job is to handle all communication in the community forum or anything that's like setting up Zoom events and calendars, those community elements of your membership or program. If you have like live Zoom calls or something like that, the community manager is often the person that helps moderate and facilitate that deliverable, schedule it, set up the reminders for it, all of that just kind of stuff. So the communication strategy for the community forum, and then any community deliverables. So like live discussion calls, onboarding and orientation calls, I recommend my clients do those. Those are community manager roles. So you don't do the onboarding call, your community manager actually does the onboarding call. So own the forum, community onboarding, community communication, like inside of that forum. You can expand outside of that if you need to. Community related deliverables. And then a few of the things that people tend to miss with the community manager role is like reporting. So it's really their job to report trends that are going on in the community, like, hey, we're seeing a lot of people getting stuck on this, or we're seeing a lot of questions about this, or like, hey, the economy is coming up a lot more than it used to. They should be reflecting all of that back to the team because they're the one who has the pulse point in the community, right? So they're the ones that should be really reflecting that back to the team. They should be reporting member successes and wins and really the one responsible for collecting and organizing those stories and making sure that they get shared. That's why in my course, I have a whole bonus on just collecting, organizing, and sharing stories, because that's such a key role for a community manager, is knowing the wins and successes of your people. And then tracking any community related metrics, like active members in the Facebook group, that sort of stuff. So reporting, and then team support elements. There's a couple of ways that a community manager should really support the team other than what I've already mentioned around reporting. And one is, if you have a customer support team, the community manager often needs to cross collaborate with customer support, because if you think about it, I feel like a person who is talking to a business. It doesn't matter if I am DMing you on Instagram, or if I'm writing into support, or if I'm posting in the Facebook group. I think you know everything about me. So when I write about something to support, sometimes, you all know this, it's like carrying a conversation from a different platform. It's like they're talking about something, you're like, I feel like I should have some context on this, but I don't. So a community manager will often need to provide context to support and say, oh no, this is a very active member. I told her to go to you because she's having trouble with XYZ, or whatever it might be. They can also support in preparation of any frequently asked questions that you have on your sales page and any like support articles, because again, they really know what challenges the community faces once they become a member or buy the course. They're the ones who have that pulse point, so they can really support in helping develop those frequently asked questions to help mitigate a lot of the questions that they get in the community. And then from an operations perspective, they can also just support in making sure that they have all of their community SOPs done and updated. Really big on processes, all team members doing a screen share recording of everything that they do and having that documented, so that if they elevate into a new role in your business, or if for whatever reason they decide to leave, or you decide that they need to leave, everything is documented in there. So that's another way that they can support. So does that give you all like a really good idea, just so we have full context of like, it's not just like posting in a Facebook group and engaging. There's so much more to this role. And that's why when I talk about hiring a community manager, they really need to be really detailed, because they're the cruise director, right? They're communicating all of the details to all of your people. Where do you need to be? How do you get there? What's the Zoom link? What time? Who's the special guest? Like, that's the community manager so often. So they need to be detail oriented. They need to be a really good, not just written communicator, like being able to write good, compelling copy, but they also need to be good at oral communication. Maybe more importantly, because now with AI can support them in writing really great social posts, but AI can't support them when they're leading an orientation call with a member. So more than anything, you really want to be looking for, how do they present on video? Can they lead a Zoom room? Can they really run the show of a Zoom room? And we always want somebody who is a lover of people and had that tested. If you've worked in hospitality or retail, customer support, you've had your love for people tested. There's a lot of people who are like, oh, I love people. And I'm like, you love having friends, but you've never worked in customer support or retail. That might change your love of people very quickly. So I always want somebody who has a strong and tested love of people, and then emotional intelligence is something I look for That's more important in some memberships than others, some programs than others, because some are more sensitive topics. You have more vulnerable people, and you need somebody who is more emotionally intelligent that can handle those conflict heavy situations or vulnerable situations more. Okay, I think that's like a deep dive on all things community manager, what to look for in a community manager.